And then, the opening of the question, and I can't remember what it was, but it was like, oh, yes, confirmed.
Yeah, let me tell you something.
It was one of those. It was one of those, And so what I did was I preempted my answer, and I said, because then she asked the question, and I said, you're actually not going to like my answer to this question, but I'm just going to tell you what I've seen, and I appreciate the question. And then I answered the question. And of course, she didn't like the answer. Yeah. You know why she didn't like the answer? Because the answer was the leadership question and the problem with the people that you're having is not a problem with the people that you have. It's a problem with you, which is the way it is with all leadership problems. When you have a problem with your team isn't performing the way you want them to do. They're lazy. Oh, they don't do the mission correctly. Well, whose fault is that? You're the leader. Yeah. You're the leader in charge of the people. So if they're not doing the mission that you want them to execute it or how you want them to execute it, you can't blame them. They literally work for you. You are the boss of them. Mm-hmm. So do you want to explain to me how you give them the direction? You want to talk to me about like what sort of direction you give them, how you communicate with them? And we went down that road, but at the end of the day, she sat down she took nothing I said on board, zero. And this is a fairly rare occasion. Yeah. That's why I remember this was a couple of years ago, but I remember it because I thought, yep, when she stood up, I said, oh, she's not listening to me. Yeah. And then she's not going to like my answer. And then when she sat down, I said, yep, she's going to walk out of here and go, that guy didn't know what he was talking about. Yeah. It's not my problem that my team is all jacked up. Yeah. It's not my fault that my team is lazy. Yeah. One of her key components of her statement was that her team was lazy. Yeah. And they weren't meeting the standards. And the answer to that question isn't, beat them harder, because that doesn't work. Yeah. The answer to that question is you as a leader are not doing a good job of leading them. Or there is a chance that your team is completely incompetent and you need to train them or get rid of them. Guess what both of those things are? Your responsibility. You're the leader. You need to train them or you need to get rid of them. So,
worst answer in the world.
Yeah.
And the best.
It's the worst answer in the world. It hurts. Leif talks about this. Leif talks about when he's writing No Bad Teams, Only Bad Leaders. Yeah. He's literally thinking about things that he did where he was blaming his team, and he's looking back going, here I was blaming my team and none of it was my fault. And that's the revelation that you have. Yeah.
Brad, I've seen literally witnessed this like a bunch of times too, where people would stand up with what I thought was sort of that sort of feel, that tone, like, oh, like they're just gonna stump you, Mr. Know-it-all, kind of attitude. And then you tell them that answer. Like, it's like, hey, it's your responsibility, and then I can see their mind just totally changing. Yeah. And they accept it.
And actually, going back to this woman, when I was talking to this woman, I immediately tried to frame it in the most humble way to not offend her ego. When I told her, you're not going to like the answer I give you. I didn't say it like that. I was like, look, I'm going to give you an answer that I got a feeling you're probably not even going to like this answer, but I'm just going to tell you kind of what I've seen. So I tried to do my best to not hit her ego in the face. The problem was her ego was big and strong and dug in.
And leading the way.
And it was leading out front. And so it was, and that always bums me out. And it doesn't happen very often. Like I said, this is 2 years ago or something like that. And I'm remembering this person asking this question. I remember thinking to myself, that she doesn't want to hear what I'm going to do. What she wanted me to say is, yeah, you're right. Your team is so horrible, and
you're the exception.
They probably just hate the world, and they don't want to do a good like what it is, they probably don't want to do a good job. They probably don't want to get promoted. They probably don't want to make any extra money. They probably want to go home unsatisfied with your job. That's their deal, right? Yeah. And I'm sorry that you've been burdened with this horrible team that feels that way.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's absolutely true. You don't have you might have one or two people on your team that aren't very enthusiastic, but you're not going to have a whole team that no one wants to do a good job. No one wants to put in any extra effort. No one wants to work hard. You don't have a whole team like that. Yeah. And by the way, if you do have a team like that, guess what? It is your responsibility to get rid of those members that don't want to do what they need to do to win. Yeah, a lot of times when it happens, when I lead people down that question, they'll be like, hey, I got this department, and I'll say, oh, okay, well, I got this department and they got these mid-level managers and they're all horrible. I'm like, oh, well, that's terrible. Who's in charge of the mid-level managers? Oh, well, it's this guy. Oh, okay, who's in charge of that guy? Oh, this other guy. Who's in charge of that guy? Well, I am.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So whose fault is this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's your fault.
Yeah.
It's truly your fault.